We got a second mic? Can you guys hear okay? Can you hear me well? Thank you guys. So we want to talk to you about a few things. One is this new word that's up on the screen, giftivism. Second are the 4 key shifts of giftivism, and we really want to pepper it with stories. Pancho is an incredible guy. Once you hear his story, he'll be one of the most inspiring people you might meet in your life. Wait till you hear his story. I'm going to share a few stories from my own journey, but before we do that, we wanted to play a little video, so I'm going to hold this while Pancho can keep the flow. This video is only 30 seconds, so you got to tune in. It's really powerful. There you are. How's that for an idea? It takes some astrophysics to do that, huh? All right. Here we go. The video is called Power of One. 30 seconds to see how many people you recognize and see what goes through your hearts. Just take a moment to breathe. I'm going to turn this on. Here we go. How many of you recognize all the people in there? Oh. This girl, 6 years old, Ruby Bridges, is the first woman. She was in there. She was the first girl. She was 6 years old. And they decided that she was going to go to a school. It was an all-white school where no one of color was allowed. So she decides that she's going to walk in. And as she's walking in, there's loads and loads of people. Everybody booing her, cheering her, throwing things at her. I mean, this is not a safe place to go. Nobody even wanted to teach her. No one wanted to be in her class, except for that one teacher, Mrs. Henry. And Mrs. Henry says, I will teach that girl. Go ahead, let the world say whatever they want to do. So she says, okay, you come on in. So she's walking in. And she tells, her advice to Ruby was, don't talk to any of those people. Don't look at any of them. But imagine you're 6 years old, you're walking in, and all these people are saying, look at your color, your skin, you can't be here. Nobody wants you to be here. Her dad got kicked out of his job. Grandparents got kicked out of their land. She couldn't even eat lunch at school because they thought it was going to be poisoned, so she had to bring food from home. Now, this 6-year-old was given specific instructions not to talk to those people. But Mrs. Henry one day was looking out, and she's walking, and all these crowds of people are there, and she's whispering. Her lips are moving. And so Mrs. Henry comes and says, Ruby, I told you not to talk to them. Why were you speaking to them? She says, I was not speaking to them, Miss Henry. She says, I saw your lips moving. I know you were talking to them. She says, I wasn't talking to them. I was praying for them. Here are these people who are abusing her in all kinds of ways, and the 6-year-old stands up and says, I'm going to rebound it back with love. I'm going to rebound it back with blessings. May you find the goodness of your heart to include everybody. And this is the reason why so much of what we see in the United States is happening, because of this one 6-year-old who had that courage. Now that is not activism. That is activism, but it's much more than activism. It's what we call giftivism. I want to give you another example before I define the word. This guy, his name is Julio Diaz. I don't think most of you have probably heard of him. Now Julio, you heard of Julio? Look at that, don't you read the newspapers? He was in the newspapers recently, maybe last year sometime. Now Julio lives in New York. Every day he goes out and takes the subway and goes back home. He gets off one stop before to go to his favorite taqueria. He does this 6 out of 7 days. Now this one day he gets out of the metro subway station, I guess is what they call it in New York. He gets out of the subway and this kid comes up to him. He's got a big knife. He says, give me your money. Of course, like any rational person, Julio says, okay man, here you go. No need to harm me, here's my wallet. Kid's happy, kid goes, he starts to walk away. Now Julio turns to him, and Julio says, hey man, it's a little cold. Do you want my jacket too? Now this kid's like scratching his head. They don't teach you this in Robbery 101, right? Like, what's up with this? Like, do I go back? Do I stay here? What do you do? So he comes back, and he's like, yeah, actually it is cold. You know what, I'll take that jacket too. But this time when he comes back, it was at the invitation of Julio. This time when he comes back, the dynamic between them is totally different. And Julio says, at the end of their few sentences, Julio says, I was about to go grab a burrito. You want to come out with me? Now again, this guy's scratching his head. Do you go out with the guy you were about to rob? Probably not a good idea, right? But he says, man, he's a nice guy. I'm going to go. So he goes. And they actually have this meal together. And Julio goes to this taqueria regularly, so everyone knows him. And this kid's like, hey, how come you're nice to everybody? How come the dishwasher knows you too? He's like, yeah, everybody's like my brother. I go and talk to them, and they're nice to me, I'm nice to them. And they start having this conversation. Now, at the end of the meal, the check comes. And Julio says, hey, I would pay for you, but you've got my wallet. What do? So the kid takes the wallet, hands it to him. Now, at this point, Julio does something remarkable. He says, thanks for the wallet, man, but I want one more thing. Can you give me your knife? That big knife that he used to rob him. I imagine if you were in that situation, what would you do? Give the knife back to such a nice guy. Power of love. Right? That's giftivism. It's not activism because, I hate this guy because this kid's a punk and he's got all this violence and let's do all this. He's using the power of love, power of generosity to change and melt the other guy. That's giftivism. Practice radically generous acts to change the world. Now, you see at the bottom, you see all those photos, right? You see Gandhi. So many examples. I could tell you story after story after story of Gandhi. When he's in front of so many people, all kinds of crazy things happen, and Gandhi's practicing love. Gandhi's practicing humility. Right? There was a time when Gandhi was in front of 700 people. And all of a sudden, some punks come up and they're like, oh yeah, Gandhi, you're into nonviolence? Let's see how strong your nonviolence is. And a whole bunch of thugs come in with their weapons and start beating everybody up. Right? They say, let's see how strong your nonviolence is now. All right, yeah, And what happens? Gandhi's up on stage. Gandhi's like this beacon. He led 1 billion people in this nonviolent revolution. He's up on stage and he's giving this talk. All of a sudden, there's this chaos. Gandhi's face is completely serene, but his body starts jerking. He's probably feeling the negativity of all these people. He's in his 70s at this time. Now Gandhi says everyone's afraid for Gandhi's life. Right? So they say, no, you need to sneak out. Gandhi says, no, I want to be here. And actually, I want to talk to the leader of that gang. And people are like, what are you talking about, man? This is not a good idea. Gandhi says, I want to go. He says, okay, if Gandhi says he wants to go, you got to go, right? So they decide to go, and they say, okay, 10 of us all surround him in this area. This is just like, their version of Secret Service. Gandhi says, no, I want to go alone. He goes up to that guy, he had one more person just to lean on because he was old at this point. And he says, I want to hear you. Why are you doing this? In the middle of all this chaos, Gandhi's talking to him, and this giant of a man, is humble enough to say, I want to hear you, I want to listen to you. Most of us don't even know how to listen, and then if you have that kind of power, we totally forget how to listen. But here is Gandhi. And this man, by the end of their half-an-hour conversation, says, you know, it's really not safe for you to be here. Let me show you a back cut where there's no other thugs. Same guy that has launched this whole chaos is the one that escorts Gandhi out. But because Gandhi had this power, this inner power, this power of love, he wasn't afraid of the guy, and he didn't want to like change him. He actually wanted to listen to him. He wanted to hug him. He wanted to embrace him. He wanted to love his humanity. That is the power of giftivism, and you can go across the board to find people like that. But in this era, what is most inspiring about this era is that it's no longer about the big Gandhis of the world. It's no longer about the Mother Teresas and the Dalai Lamas and the Martin Luther Kings. Those are all amazing people, no doubt. They're people we look up to. But it's about the Julio Diaz's. How many of us can have that Julio Diaz moment? How many of us can tap into that love in ourselves? That's what this revolution is about. That's what we're seeing. I was just in Paris 2 days ago with people who had launched there was a 21-year-old launched the Tunisian revolution. There's a 24-year-old, Gigi Abraham, launched the Egyptian revolution. These are things that have never been done before, and they're 20-somethings using technology and using love to change the world. So there's incredible hope here. I want to tell you, Pancho and I were talking this morning. I said, I got to tell a little bit about my journey. Which story do you think I should share? And Pancho says, give him the lemon story. I was like, lemon story? Okay, all right, I'll do it. So here it is. Let's see if you guys like it. A true story. I was 14. First time. I'm from India, originally.
Part of the planet we call India.
Part of the planet we call India. Pancho doesn't like barriers between countries. I like it. So I'm from part of the planet we call India. And with my family, we all moved here. And when we moved here, every so often we'd go back. So here was my first trip back. And I had a friend since like kindergarten, and he had just got a motorbike. So he was super excited to like show off his motorbike. And here we are, riding this motorbike, and he's going along, and all of a sudden, like, there's these potholes. Indian roads, I don't know if you guys know, but they're not quite like American roads, It's much more energetic, so to speak. So you're like going on. And here's, my friend, he's just got his motorbike, he wants to show off, and so he gets up, and he's like, oh, wait, I got this little trick, and he's like, showing his stuff up, and I've got like an American stomach at this point, and so I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm going to throw up, you gotta stop, you gotta slow down, so I'm going to just throw up, And he thought I was just joking or something, he accelerates, and he does more of that stuff, and so sure enough, I throw up. And in India, you have a bunch of street vendors all over the place. And there was this guy who comes up on a bicycle, and he has a little bag, and he saw that here were these two 14-year-olds in trouble. Because my friend didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do. This hadn't happened to us, and all these thoughts go in your mind, you're embarrassed, all these things. And so here we are, and this little guy comes up, and he takes out a lemon from his bag. He goes up to a street vendor, borrows a knife, cuts the lemon in half, comes up to me, gives me that lemon to say, look, suck on this citrus, it'll make you feel good. And he didn't say that, he just kind of handed it to me, it was obvious. And then he left. And at that time, I kind of took the lemon in and I said, yeah, it does make me feel good, and that was nice. But later, I thought about it, and I said, how many people do you just hook up silently like that? Right? Without getting any credit. He wasn't in the papers. He didn't care to get a thing. He's not even my Facebook friend. He's not like trying to, he's just doing this for the love of it. He's just doing it to help another person. And so I look at my life and I say, how many people in my life, who do you remember from all your life? You remember those people who just done acts of love for you, like this guy did for me. I won't forget it, but he'll never even know that. So I thought to myself, what if when I grow up, I want to be like that guy. I want to be like that guy who's just like hooking people up left and right, but no credit. Right? Just trying to do his little bit, trying to shine his corner of the world, and then kind of disappears. Can you do that? So that's what we started doing. And then we started this organization. you know, it's a pretty diverse crowd, so it's hard to know which level I want to hit you guys at, because you guys, there's a bunch of young folks, there's a bunch of elders, there's a bunch of people in between. So I think what I'll do is I'll tell you the story of how Service Space started and then give it to Pancho. So Service Space, a few of us, we were in the SiliconValley.com. Right? This is before Facebook and Twitter and even before Google. And we had a lot of chances to go out and actually make a lot of money using technology, because we were from the Silicon Valley. But a part of us said, look, it's not just about money. Right? It's actually about something much more. It's about connection. It's about community. It's about compassion. So we said, how can we bring this into our lives? So we went to a homeless shelter, we built a website, and that was really fun. You know, you go out and you do something. And at the end, people, whenever you do something for someone, people are like, oh yeah, do you want your logo? Can we give you credit? And we would just be like, no strings attached. Like, we just want to do it for the love of it. And actually, thank you for giving me the opportunity, because that really allows me to grow. It's really powerful. So a bunch of us did it, and then we went on and we did more things. We started, you know, how many of you guys, like if I were to tell you, think honestly, right? If I were to tell you, how many good news things have you heard? You've heard a lot of bad news in the world. That goes on. That's what we read. How many people have heard good news in the last week? It should be everybody. Now, if I ask you, how many people have heard bad news in the last week? Exactly. Shouldn't that be the opposite? Shouldn't we have more good in the world? But who's doing the good? How come good is not spreading? Because there aren't enough storytellers that share this stuff. It can't be monetized, so not enough people are doing it. So we started doing these kinds of things. And then we even started doing, like, running a restaurant, which I want to tell you about a little later, because it's got a twist. So we had a bunch of different projects. There was a whole ecosystem. So here's another interesting fact. In 1954, up until 1954, it was thought that human beings could never run a mile under 4 minutes. Do we have anyone who can actually run a mile under 4 minutes? Under 4 minutes? Yeah, I somehow don't believe all of you. It was thought to be humanly impossible. Yeah? And then this guy named Roger Bannister breaks the 4-minute mile. It's all over the news. People say, oh, it's impossible. The impossible has been done. This is a human miracle. And then guess what happens? 2 months later, another guy breaks the record. And the most remarkable thing, over the next 3 years, 16 people broke the 4-minute mile. All of a sudden, it's almost like somebody says, it's impossible, and then it's possible. As soon as it's possible, there's like a glitch in the matrix, and all of a sudden everyone can do it. And now, of course, 4-minute mile is no big deal. So what are those things of our times? I was telling Pancho yesterday, you know, one of the messages we want to get to the youth, especially, is that the greatest advantage you have is that you don't know what's possible, but you also don't know what's impossible. That's huge. No one can tell you this is possible and this is not possible. You got 6-year-old Ruby Bridges didn't know that you aren't supposed to hate those people that harm you. But that impossibleness is what created the revolution. So we all have that possibility. So we had a bunch of rules. I don't think I'm going to get into that. But we had some core values, which people all said, oh, impossible. You know, when we said we were going to be all volunteer run, they said, oh no, that's not going to work. That can't scale. It says, we're not going to forget money. You know, we said, we're not even going to ask for money. We're going to trust that people's cup of gratitude will overflow if you deliver enough value. People said, no, that can't really work. You know, that's like so idealistic. Lo and behold, it's all working. We said, we're going to focus on small acts. People said, no, that you can't really build a movement like that. There's 350,000 members now. So who knows, you know? So you take something impossible and you go out and try it. And maybe it works out. Or maybe it doesn't, but it's worth trying. And when you're young, you don't know. When I was young, I didn't know. And it's turned out to be beautiful. So I'm going to hand it over to Pancho to tell you a little bit about his journey. And then I'll come back. No need to clap yet.
Well, my family calls me Pancho, and many of you don't know me. But I'd like you to know that I love you all. And what about loving whole humanity? What about putting a man on the moon? What about eradicating nuclear weapons from the face of the planet? So part of my my story that I would like to share. I came to this part of the planet 8 years ago. So my passion to study life in other stars, astrobiology, life as we know it and as we don't know it. And I started doing a graduate program, a PhD, and then I discovered that the University of California and a couple of labs, Los Alamos and Livermore labs, were doing the new set of nuclear weapons, a safer nuclear weapon. And it really doesn't matter if it was the Bush administration, because now Obama keeps doing it, but many of us said, like, let's think about the impossible and let's do it right here, right now. I don't care that I need 1 year or 1 second to get my PhD. I don't want to receive a title from an irresponsible institution that is putting at risk the survival of all humanity. So how do we make this change? Is it impossible to go and talk to the people that are making these decisions and touch their heart, convert their heart so that we can twist around this? So a bunch of us decided to do a fast, a 9-day fast, to bring to the table to the people making this decision in the University of California regions that they are not elected, by the way, they are appointed. So we said, we're going to go there after 9 days of just drinking water. We're coming with that soul power that Nipun was talking about, that giftivism, that truly anchored radical love to touch other people and say, what would you do if you were a group of students that would like to eradicate nuclear weapons from the planet? What would you do? So they didn't listen to us, so they asked us to leave, so we didn't leave. We said we're going to do non-violent civil disobedience, and we will stay right here. We will stay right here until we're here. So they bring the police, and they asked us to leave, and they didn't. And what did they do? Well, we were just sitting right there, just like you're sitting right there. And then this big white police officer comes and jumps into the brown guy, that was me, and put his knee on my neck, start twisting my arm. I'm using excruciating pain after 9 days of no eating. And I have, all of a sudden, like, this voice came to me, like, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. And I said, there's something in the human spirit that is more powerful than this. And they carry me, and then I didn't move, but they have to carry me after this painful situation. And when we were outside of the room, it took me a little while to process, like, why this guy was doing this. So I was a little bit angry. But all of a sudden, I channeled that anger, and then I looked at this brother, and I say, hey, brother, you know what? I forgive you. And he was all evasive, no eye contact. When I say, I forgive you, he just turned back. Because this is a greater cause. That is greater than you, greater than me, and I'm not doing this only for you. I'm doing this for you, for your children, and the children of their children. And I bet that you love Mexican food. And you just like, started smiling, and I said, yes, I do. Well, I know the best place in the Mission in San Francisco, and at that point I wasn't vegetarian, so I say, and it's the best carnitas that I know, and quesadillas and sopes. I'm going to take you right there, and I'm going to break my fast with you, brother. Would you like to come with me? And he smiled and said, like, sure. All of a sudden, the atmosphere changed there, and the handcuffs were very tight, and he just went with an older police officer to loose a little bit the ties of a sister that was like screaming because he was very tight. He went around and all that stuff. So that was how we can channel that anger and trying to touch the heart. And again, imagine the level of ignorance and pain that our brother was. We have to start punishing people and trying to oppress, because people cannot oppress you unless you give them permission. So he was trying to oppress me, but it's impossible. When you have that type that people was talking about, they cannot do it. And I didn't learn that in books or going to school or the PhDs, because we have enough PhDs. We need PhDs right now. That's what we need to have right now. So I didn't learn it there in watching screen. No, I learned it hanging out with people like Nipun, hanging out with people like Ramos, hanging hung out with people like Jacob and Allison and people like you and my brother Keith, I gave him hugs. That's how you learn that force. And so what is, just to pass you around it, yes, that what is it is nonviolence all about? Like, nonviolence is not the absence of violence. It's when your heart is so full of love, so full of compassion, that you don't have room for hatred. You don't have room for violence. You don't have room for resentment. So it's not a double negative, it's a superlative positive. It's a call of the 99% to come together and to break inhumane laws with love. So it's the nonviolence of Martin Luther King Jr., it's the nonviolence of Gandhi, the nonviolence of Cesar Chavez that make us fearless and unstoppable. And so I'm going to tell you a brief story of Brother Samata. He came and visited Casa de Paz in Oakland, where we live right now. It's a very rough neighborhood. It's a lot of physical violence, and is that monk right there, so he's the kind of person that cannot blend into the background. You know, it's an American Buddhist monk, like fair skin, and he just walking in this very rough neighborhood where you hear shootings every other week. And people like you, a 14-year-old 8 months ago was killed, and the retaliation, the gang was killed another 14-year-old. That's the thing that we said, like, no, this is not okay. So this brother went on a walk, a 5-mile walk, just being himself. And when he's coming back, 3 youngsters yell at him, "Hey man!" He just turns around. "Yes? Are you a Buddhist monk?" He's like, "Yes, I am." "You look hella peaceful, man." And he's like, "Well, that's what I'm trying to do, you know, little by little." So it takes so little, right? So little just to walk around the block, to bring peace to your community, to bring peace to the earth community. But what is very challenging is to be the peace of the world. So that, how many hours that brother needs to spend in receptive silence or praying or contemplation or meditation, whatever you want to call it, in order to be radiating that love and that compassion so that you can look hella peaceful.
We're going to talk, Pancho will be back too, but just in the tail end of what we're going to share, just 4 somewhat quick things. The first thing is consumption to contribution. This is the first big shift. If you think about it, there's an amazing statistic I read just last week in the New York Times. Think about how many ads an average American sees every day. And now, if I were to take a guess, I'm guessing that some people would say hundreds, maybe some people would say over 1,000. The answer is over 5,000 ads every single day. Now, what is each one of those ads doing? It's telling you you are incomplete as you are. You need to buy my gadget. You need to buy my, this thing and that thing, and to make yourself look beautiful, because otherwise you're incomplete without all this. Right? You're not cool without all these things. They're masterminding all that. There are people who are just sitting there and saying, "Oh, how can we get all these kids to talk about our product so they buy it, so they can get rich off of that?" It's consumption, 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 consumption. So we have to shift that and say, contribute. Instead of opening, 2005, my wife and I, we'd just been married 6 months. We decided to go on a walking pilgrimage across India. Gandhi is a big inspiration for both of us. So we went to the Gandhi ashram in India, and we said, we're going to walk south, and we're going to eat wherever food is offered, and we're going to sleep wherever place is offered. And the most remarkable thing, as you walk in this way, you could go hungry. People could attack you. All kinds of crazy things could happen. You have nothing. You have no power. People don't care what's on your business card. People don't care how you look. It's about how much love you give. It's every moment. We would go up into these villages and pick up plastic. We would go up and share stories. There was this man carrying a haystack. He was like this old man, and he was just like being burdened by this hay. But he needs to do that because he makes like less than $1 a day. Right? So he's doing all this hard work, and I'm saying, "Hey man, I go and befriend him. I said, you're like my grandpa. I can't let you carry this. Would you let me carry it?" And he's like, okay, yeah, sure. You know, at first he thought about it. And then as he's walking, he's like calling all the villagers. He's like, look, some people came to my doorstep and they're actually just helping me. And then he says, it's like God has sent them. It's unbelievable. He's never seen anybody, he'd never been approached by anybody who says he'll carry his haystack. It was such a simple thing, but it made his day. And it made my day. And you actually have that opportunity in every moment. Instead of saying, what can I get, what can I get, what can I get? What if we look at it and say, what can I give? How can I contribute? So here, I want to tell you about these smile cards. There's a whole bunch of them inside. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of smile cards, but basically you do small acts of kindness and you leave a smile card behind. And the smile card tells the person that you can't pay back. Right? That's how the consumeristic stuff works. It's like, I do something for you, what are you going to do for me? Smile card says, you did something, someone has tagged you with an act of kindness. Now it's your chance to pay it forward for somebody else in the world. So imagine going to a toll booth. Well, you guys are probably too young to be driving, but imagine going to a toll booth and you pay toll for the car behind you. Right? I live on the 4th floor. And my neighbor has this habit of like leaving trash outside their door before they go out. And so when I'm going down and I see trash outside, I say, look, I got 2 hands. Might as well pick the trash out, right? So I take the trash and I drop it down. And then I leave a little smile card. And the smile card says, you don't know who did this, but you have a chance to pay forward and do something else. Don't let the chain stop. Keep it going. Keep it going. When we started this project, there's a great story. There's a photo of juicy fruit chewing gum. There's a great story of this guy. I met him. He was like a millionaire. And we were having a meal and we're talking. He says, smile cards, that's kind of cute, but that can't change the world. And I said, yeah, okay, well, maybe it will, maybe it won't, who knows? And so we started talking and we're discussing all these things. And in between he gets a phone call from his wife. His wife is in Singapore. And he says, honey, what can I get you? And I was kind of curious, what would a millionaire's wife want? Because she can buy anything she wants, right? And so she says, juicy fruit chewing gum. And I said, why? Well, she can't buy it. So it turns out that you actually can't buy chewing gum in Singapore. And so sure enough, we go out and I have to drop him off and he says, I gotta go pick up some juicy fruit chewing gum. Okay, fine. So we go out and my car's got a flat. Call up my mom. I said, Mom, you gotta go. This guy needs to go. He's an important person. He doesn't have time and all this stuff. You gotta come fast. And so Mom comes. And we go out and we have a little drink. And because of all this whole flat tire, we really didn't have a chance to, we didn't have all the time, so he couldn't get his juicy fruit chewing gum. I told my mom about it. And so my mom had brought a little juicy fruit chewing gum. And so when we get off the table, there's a little bag. I said, it's not mine. He looks at me and he's like, I don't think it's mine, but let me look. He looks inside. There's a pack of juicy fruit chewing gum with a smile card. Right? He looks at the same guy, who's this big guy. He's like, oh, what can small things do in the world? He looks at me and with almost tears in his eyes, and he says, I get it. There was another girl who was going out, and she also didn't get it. She's like, what's the point of doing these small acts of kindness? Right? It doesn't really change the world. There's so many big problems in the world. So this girl one time was like driving. She went to IKEA, and like she's in a rush, so she parks and comes back, and all of a sudden, when she comes back, there's a little note, and it's a nasty note on her car. She says, you took 2 parking spots because you weren't careful. You parked in between 2 lanes. That's no good. People like you should not be allowed to drive on the road. And I had this nasty note. Right? And it was anonymous. So she comes home, and she's like, oh yeah, I don't even know that guy. I shouldn't be bothered by it. What's the deal? But she keeps thinking about it. She's like, why are people mean like that? Why are people? And she's thinking about it, and her whole day is ruined. At the end of the day, she says, oh, I get what smile cards are all about. The exact opposite of that. Making someone's day. It's a small thing, but they'll remember it. And if enough people change that, if enough small things happen, it could really lead to incredibly big things. I was on the plane yesterday, and that's why I have that little plane up there. And the plane it was interesting. The guy sitting next to me, he was like a gold whatever card member or something like that, where he gets upgraded to first class. I said, sometimes you should just go up to somebody in economy, someone like me. I've never sat in first class, And it says, what if you just go up to them and, sir, you've just been upgraded. And you go and sit and regular economy, man. That guy's gonna have, you know, he's gonna be happy for the rest of the day. He's gonna go home and talk about it. He's gonna create incredible. He's like, you know, that's a pretty good idea. And he says, you know, we actually get like all these lounge accesses and all that, and we're allowed to take friends. And I don't know why I don't take anybody. I should just reach out to random people who are flying and be like, look, I could take 3 more of you guys. Go rest instead of sitting on that chair. You can have that nice lounge. He's like, and he started talking about all this stuff. So once your mind starts thinking in the way of contributing, then all of a sudden there's like endless ideas. I can tell you idea after idea after idea. And there's a whole bunch of smile cards over there if you guys want them. So the second shift, I'll be quicker with this, is transaction to trust. Everything is like, if I give you something, I got to take something. Right? But what if you just trust people? This is a restaurant. What you see on the left is actually really, it's a Karma Kitchen in Chicago. So we take on this restaurant. Now you go to a regular restaurant, you got a price to pay. When you go to this restaurant, it says your check is 0. Now why is it 0? Because there's still costs. We still have to cover the costs. It said it's 0 because someone before you paid for your meal. And you get to pay forward for people after you. Imagine if people just trusted you like that. Right? What if you were in lunch line, right, and you have to pay, you got your cafeteria, and it says, someone before you has paid for your meal, and you get to pay forward whatever you want for people after you. And there's a little box. You just drop whatever you want. No pressure, right? Do you think that would work? It'd be crazy. Right? Imagine going to a store and people are saying, look, I trust you to pay because I know you're going to do the right thing. Right? We always assume people aren't going to do the right thing. We always assume people are selfish. But what if you assume that people aren't generous? What if you assume that people actually want to be practicing selflessness? So that's what we've tried. Incredible stuff happens in that space. You go, it's like a whole restaurant like this, right? And usually there's like 30 people waiting outside, and everyone is paying for each other. And that just creates this remarkable vibe. There was this one guy that walks in, and he's like, this, you know, it just straight walks in like as if, you know, it's his home or something. And I said, yeah, sir. He was this Cuban guy, had like tattoos and stuff. And he's like, why? And I said, sir, would you like a table? I was volunteering as a server and as a waiter. And he says, yeah, what's going on here? You know, I got this, like, there's this happy vibe in here. Everyone seems that, what's wrong? What's going on, you know? And I said, no, nothing's wrong. This is just how we do it at Karma Kitchen. And I said, would you like to have a table? And he's like, yeah, can I get a table? Sure, yeah. And so I give him a table, and this big guy comes in, and I said, how about that table? He's like, no, I don't like that table. Can I get that table over there in the corner? And I said, yeah, sure, you know. So that's open, so we go ahead. So he goes in, I give him the menu. He hasn't even gotten the food yet. He starts crying. And I said, okay, I hope I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I didn't know what the heck was going on. It turned out that this guy lived in Berkeley. He's a Cuban guy. He had a big family. 17 years ago, he was a food thief. Their family didn't have enough to eat. And this guy was like, he was really fast. And so what he would do is whenever there's these catering jobs, the trucks come up and they load from the restaurant to the trucks. And in between, they would put it on the steps. And he would just zoom in, get the stuff, and get out. And that's how he survived. And he says, I'm in the same place. This is the place I used to steal from 17 years ago. And here I am, coming in here, treated with so much respect, so much love. And you aren't thinking that I'm here to steal. You aren't thinking that I'm this thug. You are thinking that there is love in me. And there is love in me. And that was the reason why he was crying. It's one story after another after a third. It's remarkable. That chain, you know what I'm talking about, that paid forward chain, has continued for 25,000 meals now. And still going. More than 20,000 volunteer hours have been put into it. Right? It's real. When you can trust people to love, people really step up to the game.
The third shift in giftivism is from isolation to community. And that means that being in a society, this consumer-based society, thing-oriented society, how do we shift to a people-oriented society? And this is an incredible story of Nipun's parents, Nipun's mom. So every single Wednesday for the last 14 years, I mean, some of you weren't born there. How old are you? There we go. You weren't born. They opened the doors of their house for 1 hour of silence. The second hour, read an inspirational passage and people share their aha moments. And the third hour, service. The mom of Nipun cooks for 60 to 70 people every Wednesday and shares this vegetarian Indian delicious meal. And they have been doing that for 14 years. They have fed more than 30,000 people, and anyone can come. I mean, we're talking about right now in the Occupy Wall Street and all this greed and the banksters, and they're this family that have opened their house to anyone with radical love. And so that's contagious too. So we're also trying to bring that format from isolation where you expand your heart and you know that when you serve, you create community. And that's very important. I say I love Wednesdays because I don't put Wednesdays in my schedule. I arrange my schedule around Wednesdays to go there. And how many of you washed your hands in the last 5 days? Could you raise your hand? All right, great. How many of you, if you're lucky, if you have, we are what we eat, but also we are what we digest. How many of you have gone to the bathroom to pee or poo in the last 24 hours? Okay, no constipation over there? No, okay. How many of you have washed your mind in the last 24 hours? Your mind, you wash your mind too? Okay. Well, this is what it's all about, being stillness, being silence. It doesn't matter if you call it meditation, you call it contemplation, you call it silent prayer. We need to wash our minds from all those 5,000 advertisements, from all that violence, and to put that goodness into us. So that's very important now. Then the last shift in giftivism is from scarcity to abundance. So we're told that there's not enough. We're told that we're in an economic crisis. Yes, the University of California, is almost inconceivable that every single nuclear weapon that the U.S. has ever had has been designed by one university, the University of California. Yes, there's war in Iraq. Yes, there's war in Afghanistan. We're killing these brothers and sisters. And yes, there's the climate change. But the right question to ask is what is being born? And we are being born. The inspiring things, creating the alternatives, that's where we're born. So we need to shift to see how we see reality. And when we have that different lens, we start discovering the magic in the sense of awe and beauty of the universe and of life. So, for example, in San Francisco, there was this empty lot full of plastic and glass and syringes. We cleaned it up. It took us 4 months to clean it up, the whole thing. And we say, why is it that in a pollution violence-based economy, only the people with financial resources can go and buy local, fresh, organic produce? That's not okay. So we don't want to do. So what we're going to do is we are going to grow our own fresh, local, organic produce. So we create what we call the free farm, and we have given away, after a year and a half, close to 4,000 pounds of fresh, local produce. And now we want to replicate not only that in San Francisco, but in East Oakland, in Fruitvale. And Fruitvale is called Fruitvale because some years ago, before all this madness of the totalitarianism of corporate capitalism, dead machine, there was some fruit trees over there. So when you walk there, and yes, there's a lot of physical violence, and yes, the police is doing the same like the SB 1070, but now with the youth, there's curfew. They want to pass a curfew that people like you cannot be on the street before 7 a.m. and after 10 p.m. So we say, no, this is not okay. So we want to focus on the positive here and look at the light and amplify it. How? Well, we have what we call Casa de Paz, and we have people coming there where they can be in receptive silence. And also, we know that healthy and local food is the foundation of social justice. That for us is kind of the constructive program of Gandhi. I don't want to have time to go through that. But we are adapting those eternal principles of nonviolence, the constructive programs, building the alternatives that we want to see, that is healthy and local food. So what we've been seeing is that there's tons of fruit trees in Fruitvale, of course. So every time that we see one of them, and I invite you, maybe you can start doing this in here too. We go and knock into the doors of the neighbors and, hey, you know, can we be of service? Maybe we can glean your orange tree or your avocado tree. And we did once that, and this sister, you know, in her 50s, she's like almost in tears, and she's like, I can't believe it. And I was like, why? Like, it's okay, you know? No, I've been calling the food bank and the city and the police and the fireman to bring and glean the tree, but no one wants to come. And here you are, you just came out of the blue with another friend and you're ready to glean it up. So we gleaned 240 pounds of fresh local oranges, organic oranges from a 4-year-old tree, and then went away in our neighborhood and give that fruit away. So it's just shifting that lens, and this is this is scarce. No, there's abundance. We just need to look from a different lens. Yeah, I just look at it.
Okay. Well, so we just want to conclude here. So here are the 4 shifts, right? We want to shift from consumption to contributions. Really ask the question, what can you give? Not what can you get. If you can just ask yourself that question, even just 5 times a day, it'd be an amazing thing. Transaction to trust. Trust people to be good. Right? Isolation to community. When you're selfish, you're going to be isolated more and more and more and more. But if you serve other people, there's going to be community. And as soon as there's community, there's a lot less problems. And the last thing is, from scarcity to abundance. Right? Enough. There's enough for everybody, but you just have to shift the lens. If you got green goggles on, everything looks green. And then some other guy's got, you know, red goggles on, everything looks red, and you keep fighting. Oh, it's red, it's red. No, it's green. It's like, just take the goggles off. It's enough. There's enough for everybody. Right? If, as Gandhi said, there's enough for everybody's needs. There's not enough for everyone's greed. So we really need to move from out of our greed, and generosity is the answer. There's greed is everywhere. In India right now, there's an incredible movement going on. Millions of people, non-violently, against corruption. And what's the answer? What are we going to do? We can resist corruption, but you also have to have constructive programs to actually bring more generosity in the world. This is a photo of a rickshaw driver. I don't know how many of you guys have been in a rickshaw. In India, it's very common. So you get in a rickshaw and you say, I want to go from point A to point B. And you tell the guy, and you know what the guy does? He says, oh, you know, actually, you don't seem to be local here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to this side and that side and take you a very long route. So the person sitting inside says, oh man, humanity's gone to hell. You know, this is like terrible. People don't have any faith. So it's like these rickshaw drivers are so corrupt and they're terrible. But if you actually go and live with the rickshaw drivers, you realize that he's living in a house that's like this big for 9 people. They all spend the day inside. They sleep outside. And that rickshaw driver's got some dreams for his kids. Right? He wants to send them to college. He wants them to be educated and have enough. What's he going to do? So it's like this impasse. What are you going to do? And this guy says, I'm going to be generous. Right? Have you heard those statistics of how many people live on less than $1 a day? Hundreds of millions of people live on less than $1 a day. Right? Less than $1 a day. This guy is one of them. And so most of us think, oh, we need to go and hand out. We need to give to them. This guy's saying, you don't need to give to me. I want to give back. So he runs his rickshaw on that paid forward basis. You know how we talk about Karma Kitchen? Where he's saying, you pay forward for the person after you. Your ride, there's no meter. I don't have a meter. Right? It's up to you to pay forward for the person after you. Because someone before you paid for you. And my livelihood, my bread and butter depends on it, but I have faith that people are generous. And as soon as he started doing this, the whole city started talking about it. Created a huge revolution in that city. And so that possibility is there for all of us. You don't have to be the Bill Gates of the world to create change in the world. You could be a rickshaw driver, and I think all of us are we're all in the same boat. We can all do something no matter where we're planted. That's really the essence of our message. We've got we've got a song that we want to end with. And while I load that up, I just want to have Pancho maybe share a minute.
Optimism is the practice of radical, generous, and courageous action, right? And what we're talking about right here is that we want to put together the inner revolution and the outer revolution to have the total revolution of the human spirit. So once we have activists being spiritual and spiritual people being active, then that's when we're going to have the total revolution of the human spirit. And It doesn't matter what country, what religion, what sexual orientation. What matters is to be a responsible citizen of the world.
We want to end with this song. Pay attention to the lyrics here. They're amazing. And before we, after that, we'll end. And we just want to say we're here for both the days. Give us a hug. We're everyday folks. We're just trying to be the change, shine our corner of the world. There's smile cards in there. We're doing the session, and we love hugs. So thank you all for being so patient. And we can't beatbox and stuff like that, but we hope that we tried to touch you with our sincerity. Here's a song, Pay Attention to the Lyrics, amazing, by Holly Near.
Can you call on your imagination as if telling a myth to a child? What if the fantastical, wonderful, magical, and the romantic, the brave and the wild? Once upon a time there was a power so great that no one could know its name. People tried to claim it and rule with it, always served arrogance and it in shame. Thousands of years would pass in a moment, hundreds of cultures would come and go, each generation with a glorious calling, even when they were too busy to know. And then one day, after 2 millennia, which after all was a small part of time, hundreds of souls found their way out of nowhere to be on earth at the threat of decline. And so although they moved as one being, even though each would arrive here alone, they promised to work in grace with each other to brave the beautiful planet called home. There was no promise that they could save it, but how exciting to give it a try. If each one did just one thing beautifully, complex life on Earth might not die. And so they arrived in a spectrum of colors. The population on Earth did explode. Some threw themselves in front of disaster, and others slowly carried their load. Some adopted small girls from China, some lived high in the branches of trees. Some died as martyrs, some lived as healers, some bravely walked with a dreadful disease. They mingled among each class and each culture, not one of them could be identified. Together they altered just enough moments to help the lost and the terrified.